very privileged this morning to have the lovely Sophie Hay with us this morning.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to see you. And we're just going to do a few quick get-to-know-you questions with Sophie. So, easy one to start with. Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Lovely. At a wedding, would you choose the chicken or beef?
Chicken.
Really?
Vegetarian?
I do love chicken. Oh, or vegetarian. I didn't think of that option.
Vegetarian. Oh, except if it's pasta. Oh, maybe I'll go to the beef.
Yeah.
A little indecisive.
Love it.
A bit of everything.
Yeah.
And call or text?
Text.
Yes, I knew that.
So tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I'm married to Scott, who you probably wouldn't have seen much at church. And I have 3 children, Charles 11, Lucy 9, and Henry 5.
And now,
Excellent.
when I've seen you around your family, you speak in a strange way.
I yell.
Not just yelling. Tell us about that strange language that you speak.
Yeah, so we speak French.
Yeah.
At home. I am the daughter of immigrants, I guess. My parents came when they got married. They came for their honeymoon and their parents told them to stay.
Oh, wow.
From
Belgium,
France? No?
From Belgium, and
Okay.
they speak Flemish and French in Belgium, but we only speak French.
Nice.
And so I was raised going to school in Australia. Actually, I went to a convent with nuns.
Wow.
And they still had nuns, and I spent all my holidays in Belgium. So we went back and forth an awful lot.
And what are the things that you miss the most about Belgium?
I miss my extended family. My mother comes from one of 10. My father's one of 5, and they all have children. And I miss them.
And they're all still over there.
And they're all still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you started coming to BHAC. Yeah, I mean, we're a church and a school normally. What brought you along to a church and a school?
Yeah. So I was raised Catholic, and in a time where Catholicism was based on fear, I guess, where you went to church because you were afraid of going to hell.
Yeah.
And I didn't. Questions weren't encouraged. It was just you needed to believe. So I stopped going to church for a long, long time. And when I had children, I still believed in God. I just didn't go, and I didn't realize there were alternative churches, I guess. And when I had children, I wanted them to know God, and I couldn't provide that as such. And so I started taking them to Catholic churches, but I didn't find that it was, I didn't think it was relevant to them, and they showed no interest, and I didn't think it was appropriate. Well, not.
Yeah.
And so then when we moved to North Turramurra, I took them to a few churches, and I walked in one day based on the signage into BHAC, and I listened to Luke, and I found the sermon. Well, first of all, I found the church really unusual in the fact that it's not a church,
Yeah.
and that people, weren't dressed up, and it wasn't all, formal.
Yeah.
And I really loved the way the Bible and what Luke was saying was relevant to today, and how the passages of the Bible were then transcribed into, this is relevant to how we live today.
Okay.
And I found that really fascinating. And actually then the journey became about me, not my children. No. And then I met Vicky. And,
that's awesome.
yeah.
And it's been great to have you actually part of our growth group for the last couple of years. And some of the things I guess that you've shared is sort of having one understanding of Jesus, possibly from your upbringing, to kind of changing that. So could you share a little bit about how that thinking has gone?
So when I walked in, I thought I knew Jesus, and I thought he was this graceful presence, like a spiritual figure, very beautiful and calm, and and I discovered that I don't know Jesus at all. And as I've progressed, I've really enjoyed learning that, I believe, this anguished man who was trying to save us, and people wouldn't listen to him. And I found it really interesting, and, I find it, every day or whenever I listen, I turn towards him, or I ask him questions. It's funny because I'm quite a sarcastic or cynical person, but his answers seems to come through the Bible and what you're reading for that, what you're sort of looking for. So I found that really interesting, and I keep learning about him, and the more I learn, the less I realise I know.
Speaking of learning, there's a resource we've got here, Word 1-to-1, which if you've been to church last few years, we've talked a little bit about, and we've had some groups. Now, you participated in this as someone who has invited you to read that. Can you tell us a little bit how that came about and how that experience of it?
My daughter's at Roseville College, and I have met some lovely people, but one of my friends that I have made there, we were discussing one day just Christianity in general, and she said, there were these great books, and this was a way to know Jesus, that John was a great way to know Jesus. And I think actually at the time in our growth we were doing Job, which I really liked as well. And so she suggested quite hesitantly, would I like to study this with her? And so essentially we've just been reading the Word 1-to-1 and discussing Jesus and discussing what's written in there.
And can I ask you, because sometimes I guess what's come up as we've talked about doing this with people is a hesitancy to ask because you're kind of scared of what the reaction might be. So how did you feel when she obviously kind of went out of her comfort zone to ask you?
Yeah, I felt really special, actually. I felt really privileged that someone who I admire, I really like her, and I know she's a very strong-based person, faith-based person, and very knowledgeable. And I felt really special that she would take the time to discuss this and teach me a different aspect of Jesus again, different from our growth groups and different from church, and another sort of persona of Jesus. So, and actually from this we've sort of gone, well, what will be the next thing that we sort of thought we'd next look at women through the Bible or something like that.
It's kind of started something for the long term. That's really great. That's encouraging, isn't it?
Really
because we can feel hesitant and you don't know what the reaction will be, but that's a great story to know that often the reaction could be a lot better than what we perceive.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sophie, for joining us on the couch for BHAC Chat. I know it's not always easy. It's a bit of a strange season, but thank you very much.
And now really appreciate you coming along.
You've got your bit out of the way, so we can get some. You can dub someone else in growth group next week.
Jane,
we're watching you.
Jane, next week. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.